He tells me on a Tuesday. Not because anything particular happened on a Tuesday. Not because there was a fight or a discovery, or the kind of cinematic confrontation that at least gives you something to explain at dinner parties. He tells me on a Tuesday in November because Sasha came back to the city in October, and he has apparently been working up to this for 31 days, and apparently Tuesday is the day he runs out of runway. Lily is asleep. That's the first thing I check, the way you instinctively brace yourself in a car. Just a reflex, something the body does before the mind has processed that there's danger. I hear her breathing through the monitor on the counter, that small even sound, that proof of something still whole and ordinary in the world. Daniel is standing by the kitchen window with his hands in his pockets. He does this when he's uncomfortable, hides his hands like he's trying to make himself smaller, which is ironic, because he is 6'2" and has never once in 7 years made himself smaller for anyone. He tells me. He says the words. He uses phrases like fallen back and what we had and I never stopped. And I genuinely notice in real time, with some part of my brain that has apparently decided to become a documentarian, that he does not say he's sorry. Not once. Not in the first sentence or the second, or in the long pause after the third. He tells me that Sasha is back, that she has been back for a month, that they have been talking. He says the word talking like it's a neutral thing, like the word doesn't carry 1,700 pounds. How long? I ask. I just told you, since... No. I set down the glass I'm holding, because I realize I've been holding it without knowing why, the way you grab something when the ground feels unstable. How long have you known that she was still something for you? He looks at the window instead of at me. There it is. The silence has a texture. It's not the silence of someone who doesn't know the answer. It's the silence of someone deciding whether the answer will hurt more than the not knowing. And I watch him make that calculation. And I watch him decide. And I think, I've been married to a man I did not fully see. I think, I am seeing him now. A while, he says. I nod. I actually nod, like a reasonable person receiving reasonable news. I ask him what he wants to do about Lily, and he says he thinks they can figure it out. And I say the word they is doing a lot of work in that sentence. And he looks at me then, finally, with something that might be shame, might be relief, and I can't tell which is worse. He leaves to stay at his brother's. He takes a bag. He doesn't take enough, which means he's planning to come back for the rest, which means I have to do this twice. I stand in the kitchen for a long time after the door closes. The monitor still breathes. Outside, a taxi goes by slowly. It's light orange in the wet street. I have 30 days. That's what he mentioned almost as an afterthought. One hand already on the door. The lawyer says we should sort the initial filing within the month, just to get things moving. 30 days to decide what Lily's life looks like before someone else decides it for me. I turn off the kitchen light and I go check on my daughter. And she is sleeping with her arms over her head the way she's done since she was a baby. And I stand in the doorway for so long the nightlight flickers. She asks on a Thursday morning while she's eating cereal. She asks the way children ask impossible things, calmly between bites, like it's a question of the same weight as where do clouds come from, or why is the sky blue at night. She asks, "Where's Daddy?" And I say he's staying at Uncle Martin's for a little while. She says, "Why?" I've been preparing for this question. I've rehearsed it in the bathroom mirror, in the car, in the 5 minutes between waking up and getting out of bed, when the full weight of everything descends before I've even put my feet on the floor. I have thought of approximately 14 answers, ranging from brutally honest to clinically vague. I have exactly none of them available to me right now. Sometimes grown-ups need a little space, I say. She considers this, stirring the cereal slowly. Like when I need space in my bedroom because it's too messy? Something like that. She nods, satisfied with this in the specific way that 6-year-olds accept explanations they don't quite believe but decide not to challenge. Then she says, "Daddy's coming to my dinosaur show, right? At school?" "Of course he is." She says, "Okay," and goes back to her cereal, and I pour my coffee, and I do not cry, because I've decided that crying happens after the school drop-off, not before, and I am a person who keeps her own rules, even when everything else is falling apart. Claire calls that afternoon. Claire always calls at the exact moment she should call, which is something I used to think was coincidence, but which I now believe is a kind of supernatural gift she has, an antenna tuned specifically to my frequency of disaster. I tell her what happened in the most factual terms I can manage. She says nothing for so long I think the call has dropped. "Claire, I'm here," she says. I'm deciding whether to say what I'm thinking." "Say it." "I knew something was wrong with him," she says, "at your birthday dinner in April. He was somewhere else the whole night, and I thought it was work stress, but—" She stops. "I'm sorry, Mara. That's not useful." "No, it's—" I sit down on the floor of the closet, which is where I go when I need to be contained by walls on all sides, like the architecture of the small space can hold me together. "It's fine. Tell me what I need to do." "First thing," Claire says, "is call a lawyer before he does." I already have a name. I write it down on a Post-it and stick it on the inside of the closet door, which is a new level of something. I see Sasha for the first time at the school pickup. Of course I do. Because the universe has a particular sense of humor. She's standing near the gate, half a step behind Daniel, wearing a coat the color of strong tea, her hair in the kind of effortless wave that takes either an hour or no time at all, and I genuinely cannot tell which. She doesn't belong here, and she knows it, and she's trying hard to stand in a way that makes her seem like she belongs here, and the effort of that is the only thing wrong with her whole performance. Daniel sees me and does the thing where he straightens slightly, like the physical act of good posture will convey reasonable adulthood. He says my name. He introduces Sasha, which is either brave or incredibly stupid, and Sasha says it's nice to meet me with an expression of such careful, rehearsed warmth that I think, she practiced this too. She prepared for me the way I prepared for Lily's question. We're all just performing our way through this. "Likewise," I say, and my voice comes out completely steady, which surprises me enough that I file it away as a small victory. Lily comes out of school at a dead run, dinosaur backpack bouncing, and launches herself at Daniel's legs, and for one moment everything stops being about Sasha and Daniel and me, and becomes only about a little girl who has not yet fully understood that her family is in the process of being reorganized. Daniel lifts her, and she squeezes his neck and looks over his shoulder at Sasha with the direct forensic gaze that children apply to strangers. "Who are you?" Lily asks. "I'm a friend of your dad's," Sasha says. "From work? From a long time ago? From before you were born?" Lily accepts this, the way she accepts everything, provisionally, with the right to revisit. She wiggles down from Daniel's arms and takes my hand without being asked, and I feel her small fingers lace into mine, and I think, this, whatever else happens, this is mine, and I will not negotiate it down. I take Lily home. I don't look back, but I know Sasha is watching, and I think, with a clarity that cuts right through the grief, that being watched by her and standing straight in it is the first small thing I can control. 2 weeks after Daniel leaves, I find the apartment. It's not glamorous. It's on the 3rd floor of a building that smells like radiator dust, and the ambitions of people who painted the walls themselves, and it has a kitchen that's smaller than the one I left, and a bathroom where the tiles are cracked in one corner, in the specific way that suggests someone tried to fix it and then lost interest. But it has a bedroom for Lily with a window that faces a maple tree, and the maple tree is bare right now, but I can picture it in spring. I can actually picture it. And I sign the lease the same afternoon. The moving happens over a weekend. Claire brings wine and a very strong opinion about which boxes go where, and we arrange the furniture with the specific, almost manic energy of women doing something that cannot be undone, which is maybe the most alive I've felt in 3 weeks. Lily runs from room to room narrating. She decides the small hallway is the dinosaur hall, and I say, that sounds excellent, and Claire says we should paint it, and I say, give me a month, and I actually mean it, which surprises me. The neighbor from the apartment above comes down at 10 o'clock to introduce himself and ask if we could move the heaviest piece of furniture, a bookshelf, slightly to the left, because apparently it's directly over his bedroom. He's holding a cup of tea when he says this, which is deeply civilized, and I move the bookshelf, and he thanks me, and that is the whole exchange. His name, I learn from the mailboxes, is Ethan Voss. I don't think about him again for 2 weeks. Daniel's mother calls me on a Wednesday and asks if we can have lunch. She says we, meaning her and me, Daniel not present, which tells me something. Patricia Calloway is a woman who has always slightly frightened me in the way that genuinely intelligent women sometimes do. She says less than she knows, and the gap between what she says and what she knows is where the real meaning lives. We meet at the kind of restaurant where the tables have linen and everyone speaks quietly. She orders salmon. She asks about Lily. She asks about the new apartment. Then she puts down her fork and says, "I want you to know that I think Daniel is being a fool." I look at her. "I don't say that to be disloyal," she continues. "I say it because it's true. Sasha Brennan was 22 years old when they were together. She was a feeling he never finished. And Daniel has confused unfinished with meant to be, because Daniel has always had difficulty telling the difference between those two things. Patricia, I also want to say," she goes on, "that whatever he decides about his life, I will not allow his decisions to diminish yours, or Lily's. I'm telling you this because I think you need to hear it from someone who isn't your lawyer or your best friend." I look at the salmon she's not eating, and the careful way her hands are folded on the table, and I think, she came here because she's ashamed. Not of me, of him. She came to put the weight of her love somewhere it would actually help, and there is something in that. Something I wasn't expecting, that makes the tightness in my chest loosen by exactly 1 degree. "Thank you," I say. "Don't thank me," she says. "Fight hard for that custody schedule. Don't let them give you every Sunday night. That's how they take the school mornings away from you." She picks up her fork. We finish the salmon. She pays, because she is also the kind of woman who pays. 3 weeks into the new apartment, I hear something through the ceiling that resolves, over the course of several evenings, into the unmistakable rhythm of someone doing renovation work. The dull thud of a rubber mallet, the drag of heavy things, a sound like a sander on old wood. It happens between 6 and 9 in the evening, which is not technically unreasonable, but which is also exactly the window during which I am trying to put Lily to bed. On the 4th night, I go upstairs and knock. Ethan Voss opens the door in a dusty t-shirt with a look on his face that says he's genuinely surprised anyone is home in this building, which is fair because most of the apartments are rented by people who work late and come home only to sleep. He looks at me and says, "You're the bookshelf." "I'm the bookshelf," I confirm. He apologizes. He says he's trying to finish the bathroom before his contractor's window closes. Apparently his contractor has a rule about not working past 10, which is a rule Ethan is imposing on himself out of respect, even when no one asked him to. I say the sanding is fine. It's the mallet that's the problem. He nods, holds up the mallet, and says, "Done. No more mallet after 6. "Thank you." He leans on the doorframe. "You just moved in, right? 3rd floor?" "A few weeks ago." "How's the radiator?" The 3rd floor radiator has a tendency to sound like it's arguing with itself. "It does," I say. I've started narrating the argument for Lily. She finds it very soothing. He laughs. It's an actual laugh, not a polite one. It comes from the right place, which is the chest, not the throat, and I notice it the way you notice a window in a room you thought was sealed, not with longing, just with the observation that there is air here, and that air is, as a matter of basic fact, good. We are now 3 weeks from Daniel's filing deadline. I've been speaking to my lawyer twice a week. The custody negotiation is at a stalemate because Daniel wants alternating weeks, and I want primary residency with liberal visitation, and his lawyer is running out the clock, and my lawyer says we need to push harder before the 30 days land. I come home from those calls and I sit on the kitchen floor and I do the math of my daughter's childhood in a way that makes me feel like I am dissecting something I love, and it is the worst version of anything I have ever done. The mallet stops after 6, every night, without fail. The school performance is on a Friday. Lily is a stegosaurus, which she informs me is a herbivore and therefore the good kind, and she has spent 2 weeks practicing the specific walk of a stegosaurus, which she has researched via a YouTube channel for children that takes dinosaur locomotion very seriously. I have watched this preparation with a love so large it is almost unbearable, the way all of parenting eventually is. Daniel arrives 5 minutes before it starts and sits 2 seats down from me, which leaves the chair between us empty in a way that is somehow louder than either of our presences. He does not bring Sasha. I notice this and decide to believe it was a thoughtful choice. Lily walks out in her cardboard stegosaurus costume and finds us in the crowd immediately, the way children do. That radar, that specific and immediate search of a room for the faces that mean safety. And she beams at us with her whole body, not just her face. And for approximately 90 seconds, Daniel and I are only 2 people watching our daughter be a dinosaur, and everything else in the world is somewhere else entirely. After the performance, Lily holds both our hands walking to the car. Daniel says quietly, "She's incredible." "Yes," I say, "she is." He looks at me then with something I wasn't expecting. Not guilt exactly, but a kind of grief, like a man standing at the edge of something he chose to step over, and is only now understanding the height of the drop. And I could say something. I could give him something here, some small softness, some grace. And I look at him and I think, no, not because I'm cruel, because it wouldn't be honest. And the one thing I have left in this that is fully mine is the right to be honest. "I'll have her Saturday," I say. "I know, Sunday at 5. I take my daughter home, and she talks about dinosaurs for the entire drive, and I let her voice fill the whole car, every corner of it, like something flooding back in. Here is what Claire does. She calls Daniel. She doesn't tell me she's going to. She decides on her own, in the fullness of her love for me, and her absolute certainty that she knows best, to call Daniel and tell him that what he is doing is going to break Lily and break me and break everything we spent years building. And she says, I know this because she confesses it the next day with the expression of someone who has just watched their own plan unfold differently than expected. She says to Daniel that Sasha will never love Lily the way Lily deserves to be loved. Daniel apparently does not take this well. He calls me that night, tightly controlled, using the voice he uses when he is furious and does not want to be seen as furious, and tells me that my friends need to stay out of his personal life, and I tell him I agree, and I tell him I didn't ask Claire to do this, and he says, fine, and hangs up. I sit with my phone in my hand and feel a rage so clean and precise it's almost like the absence of rage. Then I call Claire. I was trying to help, she says. I know. I just thought if he heard it from someone who... Claire. I say her name with the full weight of 7 years of friendship, and she goes quiet. I'm not fighting for Daniel. I'm fighting for Lily. Those are different battles, and they need different tools. Please don't take tools out of my hands. There is a pause so long I can hear her breathing. Okay, she says finally. Okay, I'm sorry. And then, because she is the person she is, but I'm not sorry I said it. I know you're not, I say. That's why I love you. Daniel calls his lawyer the next morning and accelerates the filing timeline. We now have 11 days instead of 30. I wake at 2 in the morning with the specific alertness of a person who has gone to sleep with something unresolved. The apartment is quiet except for the radiator, which is in the middle of what sounds like a heated disagreement between its upper and lower sections. Lily is asleep, sprawled in the way she does, arms over her head, diagonal across the mattress in the manner of someone who has claimed an entire continent. I go to the kitchen and make tea. I sit at the table in the dark, because the overhead light is too much right now, and the small lamp on the counter is enough. I think about Patricia. I think about what she said, unfinished versus meant to be, and how Daniel never told me in 7 years that there was something unfinished. How I built an entire life inside a space that had a fault running through it and never felt the crack. Here's what I know. I was not nothing to him. That's the cruelest part of this kind of leaving. being told you were real and good and true and still not enough, as though love is a competition with a winner and a loser, and the loser was simply outscored by a memory. I think about Lily asking why at the breakfast table and not having a good answer. I think, when she asks again, when she's older and the answer has to be more than grown-ups need space, what do I say? I have turned this over and over, and I keep arriving at the same place. I don't know. And eventually, I don't know will have to be enough. There is a knock at my door at 2:15 in the morning, which is not something that has happened since I moved in. I open it. Ethan Voss is standing in the hall in a flannel shirt and pajama pants, holding a wrench. "Your radiator," he says, "is in my wall. The pipe runs through. I've been listening to it for a week, and I think I know what's wrong." He holds up the wrench with the expression of a man who has made a reasonable, if unconventional, decision. I look at him for a moment. "It's 2 in the morning," I say. "I know. I was already awake." "Me too." "I have a theory," he says, "that if I adjust the bleed valve, it will stop doing the arguing thing. Takes 5 minutes, but I needed to tell you first, so you don't call the building manager about a stranger in your walls." I step aside and let him in. He finds the radiator in the corner of the kitchen and kneels down with the wrench, and I watch him work with the focused calm of a person who is very good with their hands and does not need anyone to watch them. 3 minutes. 4. Then a small hiss of steam and the radiator goes still. "There," he says. He stands. He looks at my cup of tea, at the lamp, at the table in the dark, and I watch him decide not to ask about any of it. That decision, the deliberate, careful not asking, lands differently than asking would have. "Thank you," I say. He nods. He goes back upstairs. I finish my tea in the silence, and the silence is, for the first time in weeks, actually quiet. The custody agreement is signed on a Thursday morning. Primary residence with me, alternating weekends with Daniel, plus Wednesday evenings and holiday rotation. My lawyer called it a good outcome. I sat in the car outside her office for 20 minutes before I could drive. That afternoon, Lily and I go to the park, and she runs ahead on the path doing the Stegosaurus walk without the costume. Just her regular shoes on the autumn leaves, entirely unself-conscious. And I think, we are going to be okay. I think it with real conviction for the first time since November. I actually feel the ground under me. That evening, Daniel calls. He sounds different, lighter somehow. He tells me that he and Sasha are thinking of moving to Portland, that Sasha has a job offer there, that it might be a good chance to restart. Portland, 1,100 miles from here. 1,100 miles from the Wednesday evenings and the alternating weekends, from the park on autumn afternoons and the school pickups and the dinosaur shows. I say nothing for long enough that he says my name, twice to check if I'm still on the line. "When?" I ask. "Probably the spring." "You can't take Lily to Portland, Daniel. We just signed." "I know, of course I know that. I'd fly back for my weekends. We'd figure it out." We'd figure it out. There it is again, the casual we, the assumption that logistics are a kind of adequate replacement for presence, the assumption that a child can be loved at distance as long as the calendar is technically being honored. I hang up. I sit on the floor of Lily's room while she sleeps, and I feel something close and collapse inside me. Not the grief of the marriage ending, which I've been carrying long enough that it's almost familiar now, but something sharper. The grief of knowing that even after the papers are signed, after the apartment is arranged and the radiator is quiet, and I have built something new with my own 2 hands, the shape of my daughter's childhood is still not fully mine to protect. I tell him about Portland in the hallway, because our lives have gradually arranged themselves this way. Small conversations in the hall, a borrowed cup of something, once a 40-minute conversation on the stairs about a book we'd both read separately, and had been thinking about for weeks without knowing the other had also been thinking about it. He listens the way he does, which is with his whole attention, leaning slightly against the wall with his arms crossed, not moving toward me or away from me, but staying in the exact right distance. When I finish, he says, "Is he allowed to move that far under the agreement?" "Not with Lily. He's allowed to go himself." But it changes what the weekends look like. Everything about it changes. The weekends, the Wednesday dinners, it changes who she has access to. It changes what close to her dad even means. He nods slowly. So what do you want to do about it? Nobody has asked me that in weeks. Not what can you do, or what are your options, or have you talked to your lawyer, but what do you want? I realize, standing in the hallway at 7:30 in the evening in a cardigan I've been wearing since Tuesday, that I don't know the last time anyone asked me that. I want to not be afraid of the answer, I say. That's the first thing. He looks at me. He doesn't say anything for a moment, and then, that sounds like a start. We stand there a little longer than we need to. Then Lily calls from inside the apartment. Mom, I can't find the Stegosaurus book. And I go back inside, and he goes back upstairs, and I find the book behind the radiator, which is now, to Lily's mild disappointment, completely silent. I call Daniel's mother. Not for intelligence, not to lobby. Just to say that if he moves to Portland, I would like him to understand what he is trading. That I hope someone who loves him will say it plainly. You can choose to leave a marriage, and that is within your power. You cannot leave your daughter and name it a practical matter. Patricia listens. Then she says, I'll talk to him. I don't know what she says. I don't ask. But Daniel calls me 2 weeks later and says, without preamble, that he has decided to stay, that the Portland option isn't right, that Lily needs him here. He does not say thank you. He does not say he was wrong. But he says Lily needs him here, and I think that is the most honest thing you've said since November. Something in me, some knot I've been carrying so long I'd stopped feeling its edges, loosens. I call Claire and tell her. She shrieks loud enough that I hold the phone away from my ear. She says, Can I say I told you? And I say, About what? And she says, About you. That you could hold this thing together. And I think about that, about what it means to hold a thing together, whether it's a marriage or a life or just a Tuesday, just the daily work of being present and not running from it. I didn't hold it together, I say. I just kept moving. Same thing, Claire says. By February, the maple tree outside Lily's window has changed. It was bare when I signed the lease, bare and ordinary, but now it's starting, just beginning. The suggestion of something coming back. The tips of the branches hold a redness that isn't leaves yet, but is the preparation for leaves, and Lily has been watching it every morning from her bed, like it's a live performance she has front-row tickets to. I've been watching Ethan, more honestly than I've been admitting. It's small things. The way he remembers what I say and refers back to it weeks later. The way he doesn't perform things. Doesn't try to be charming or effortless, just is. The way he bought a dinosaur fact book after I mentioned offhand that Lily was obsessed, and left it outside my door with a note that said, Page 47. Stegosaurus plates were possibly for temperature regulation, not armor. Thought she'd want to know. Lily read that page 11 times. We have dinner on a Sunday. Proper dinner, not hall conversation. He comes downstairs, and I have actually cooked something. And Lily shows him the dinosaur walk, and he takes it seriously in the way that children need to be taken seriously, with full attention and genuine questions. And I sit at my kitchen table and watch my daughter explain the locomotion of a stegosaurus to a man who is listening with his whole face. And I feel something warm and enormous move through me, something that is not grief and is not survival, but is something that comes after both of those things. After dinner, after Lily is in bed, we sit on the kitchen floor, because somehow we've ended up on the floor, backs against the cabinet, tea cooling beside us, the small lamp on the counter making everything gold. And he says, She's extraordinary. She is, I say. You are too, for the record. I look at him. He's not looking at the ceiling the way people do when they say important things to avoid the weight of them. He's looking at me, steady and clear. I don't know where I am yet, I say. In terms of, I don't know what I have to give right now. That's the honest version. That's the version I want, he says. We sit like that for a while. The radiator doesn't argue. Outside, a car goes by slowly, and its headlights sweep the ceiling like a clock hand. And somewhere in the building, a door closes softly, and then the night is quiet in the way that only comes after you stop waiting for something to go wrong. I think about Daniel saying we'll figure it out, the casual optimism of a man who's decided that distance is just a logistical matter. I think about Lily asking why in the voice. That means she's already storing the answer for later, for the version of herself who will ask again with more words and more weight. I think about Patricia in the restaurant, hands folded, saying what she knew because I needed to hear it from someone who didn't need anything from me. And I think I have been building something. Not the thing I planned to build, not in this apartment, not in this kitchen on this floor, but something. I've been putting weight on the ground step by step, and the ground has held. I lose an earring in March. I notice it at the end of the day. The small gold hoop I've worn for years. The one I put on by reflex. The one I was wearing the Tuesday Daniel told me he was leaving. I've worn it every day since then, without thinking. The way you wear something that belonged to a version of yourself you haven't quite let go of yet. I find it in the drawer under the bathroom sink, behind a half-empty tube of toothpaste, which is exactly the kind of place lost things end up when they're not really lost, just displaced. I hold it in my palm and I look at it for a moment. This small, ordinary gold circle. And I think about the night I stood in the kitchen and watched Daniel's taillights go down the wet street, holding my wine glass with nowhere to put it. I put the earring in the drawer and close it. I don't throw it away. That's not the point. I just put it somewhere it doesn't have to be worn. That evening, Ethan comes downstairs for dinner again. This has become a thing, a real thing, a Thursday evening thing that Lily now expects and has begun preparing for, by selecting which dinosaur fact she will share. And before we eat, he reaches over without asking, the way he does the few things he does unself-consciously, and straightens my other earring, the small amber one I've been wearing lately. His fingers are brief and careful. "Been bothering me for 10 minutes, he says. I laugh. Actually laugh, the kind that comes out before you decide whether to let it. And Lily looks up from her dinosaur book and says, with absolute authority, "Ethan, Stegosauruses had 17 plates." And Ethan says with equal authority, "I know, page 47. And Lily's face does something complicated and delighted because she's been known. And I watch it happen and I think, yes, that is exactly right. We go inside to eat, the three of us, and the maple tree in Lily's window is the palest green now, just beginning. And the apartment smells like something cooking, and I don't look back at the drawer.